Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Chester, and you know what I like to do on my show. I want to say it with me, enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today, get you fired up about my guest. We'll be spending time with Barry Sankey today about his book, 7 Cuts of Wood, a Spin Black Project. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Barry. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good afternoon, Dr. Angela. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, as is tradition, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves before we get started. So first question to you is, what makes you you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm kind of hard I'm hard on myself, which makes it easy on me with everything else that I do. I try and, be a people person. I can be, to myself a lot, but, I'm really an outgoing person, and I like to venture into minds and try and help situations that I've had to overcome myself. So I'm a people person for sure, though.
Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that this was simply the way to share the information that was placed on your heart with the rest of the world?
Well, I talk a lot, and I talk to a lot of people. I'm out there on the ground, I'm at the ground roots level, and I've shared my experience with so many people that as I got older, in the book I mentioned a police officer that I met. I was sharing my information with him, my life story, and just talking to him, and he told me, he said, "Hey, you should write a book." And I hadn't really thought about it, but I had taken writing classes, not because I really wanted to be a writer, because people saw what I was putting on paper, and they would always be pushing me toward it. And that's why I say I'm hard on myself, because I didn't just go into it. People kind of, over time it came, because it's always the right time that you should be exhausted.
Right. Now, the title of your book, 7 Cuts of Wood, can you tell us, how did you come about the title of your book? Did the title come to you first? Did it develop out of the writings? What's your story there?
Well, I have a deep history with my father and his brothers, and when you think about where we come from and how a tree grows, is you don't see the roots. And I mentioned that in the book, how when I came up with the title, actually the cover of the book, I was visiting where my people come from, Montgomery, the civil rights capital of Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. I just pulled over. I was in the process of starting the book, and I took a picture of what is the cover. And from every piece of how it came together, from going back to school at 57, because I heard President Obama speaking about how if you didn't have this or you didn't have that, you gotta. And so, a tree kind of like, you continue to grow. And I went back to art school, which tapped into my creative nature, and then they asked us to come up with a brand. And I sat there and I just kind of came up with, from the tree perspective and the perspective of what I've learned over my many years of living since I was 57 and going back to school, I had a little more on top of what the younger students had, my focus, because I knew I had been through some challenges, and that's how I came up with it.
Now, what age group would you say is most appropriate for your book? I always ask it this way. For someone who is in high school, is it appropriate for them, or would you say a little bit older, perhaps college age?
I would say as early as you can get, because I didn't write it, I didn't write it to impress. I didn't write it to put myself above or beyond. I didn't come from a literary dialogue where it would be over anybody's head. It's very simple, very basic. It's like really me talking and leveling with you. And so most of the time when we're growing up, we're trying to find ourselves out. I'm trying to write this book to help along the way. So I start back from my childhood, and I wrap up a lifetime of events without going into a lot of detail, but it's teaching all through here, deeply matted and woven together with, heartache, joy, pain, but it's put together for the earliest of age to the oldest of age. There's a teaching principle throughout because I use scripture as a guide. And that was kind of easy since my father was a ordained minister ever since he was 20. And he had two other brothers that were ministers. One is still living now. He's 91. And they have an older brother that's going to be 101. And they're all in the book because that's how important it is to try and bring the young people up on a foundation, which today is kind of like it's getting iffy because everybody wants everything real fast. But you can't see a tree grow. You can look at it all day. It's growing and you don't see it. And that's how the purpose of the two titles works in, because Spin Black is how the world turns. And we are just in it, and we have to really anchor ourselves in and try and catch the attention while we can, because there's so much to miss. And you need to find the correct path. And I think I can do that with the book because I made it simplistic enough to be able to sit down and talk to any group of people.
Now, for some of the authors that I talk to, there is a motivating nudge that they get. Like there's that moment that they're able to kind of pinpoint on the calendar, if you will, that says, yep, this was the day that I decided I need to get in gear and get this book out there. Did you have such a nudge? Did you have a moment in your mind's eye where you knew today was the day that would start the journey of what would become your book?
No, I wrote this book in 2013, actually. Like I said, I started school 2010. 2013, I graduated. It was supposed to be a 2-year degree. It took me 3 years. I was working full time. So there was no real timeline other than the fact that I like to multitask, and the book came a part of me going through a process of, like I said, heartaches. I lost a lot of my family. Son had just recently, one of my sons had just recently passed, the second one. And so the motivation was to just, sometimes you just have to get things on paper. And it was an escape from thinking about, things that I needed to, conquer, things I need to get over. So the book was.
So every author has to decide if they are going to self-publish their book or if they're going to use the professionals, if they're going to utilize the services of a publishing house. With that being said, how did you determine which way you would release your book?
I self-published it. I just wanted to have hands on everything since, like I took the picture for the cover. It was just building it, putting it together. It was part of a project that grew into a book because it was just me trying to find a brand I got into interactive media at the Art Institute of Fort Worth, and it just came about that I wanted to put it together, myself. It's part of it.
And like I said, every author has to decide what they want to do and how they want to go about getting their vision to the world. So I definitely understand that. Now, when it comes to the proper way to utilize your book, to read the book, many times an author will kind of help us along on that journey, if you will, and they will construct the book that kind of leads you on that journey, right? So some do it in a way where you should read the book from cover to cover, meaning literally page after page, put it back, put it down, pick it up, and just keep on going. Others may suggest that we do it in sections or chapters. Read chapter 1 definitely before you go to chapter 2, or you won't know what's going on. Or did you do it in a way where it's kind of reader's choice? They can read the last page first if they want to, and still be able to go back and make heads or tails of the rest. What's your suggestion there?
My suggestion would be to read it once. It's short enough that you could read it several times. And that's what I would do, because you'll find that because of scripture in it, you'll read. I've had many people who read the book come back and tell me I read it a second time because it took me a day or two to absorb the fact that I did read over something that touched me. It's poems in here, and I didn't put it in a order that most people would write a book. It's more or less as if I'm talking to somebody and I'm telling a story and I'm using my imagination and I'm adding this and I'm adding that. So to somebody who just wants to read through, you may not catch certain things until after the fact. It's like aftershock. People call me all the time and say, hey, that's a good book to talk about in a group, because it touches you in particular ways that's personal. Because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take it into a help mode, not, leave people out. So I brought in all different aspects of things that would help people help me. It helped me. I was in the struggle. We all in the struggle. That's what life is. So that's how I would read it. I would read it as many times as need be, and definitely pay attention to the scripture and how I applied the scripture to where I wrote in the book and why.
Barry, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of the book is 7 Cuts of Wood, a Spin Black Project. You can find it at Amazon and where other books are sold. You can find me on Facebook under Spin Black Project on Facebook.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Barry Sankey, and we're talking about his book, 7 Cuts of Wood, a Spin Black Project. Now, Barry, every author has to decide, especially when they're writing a story or sharing a story with their readers that has a little personal touch to it, what to include, or flip side of the coin, what to exclude. How did you determine what you would include or what you would exclude from your sharing?
The special people in my life that helped me along the way, think that when you talk about Spin Black Project, it's successful people in networking, and Black is business leadership and community kinship. It's an acronym, and that's how I got through school, basically, because I came up with a lot of acronyms, and the acronym led me to bring in community, politics in a short way, women, how important they are to the community, several different aspects that make a person whole over time, and what you're looking for is that guidance. And so what I left out, I didn't bring everybody in, but I pinpointed the highlights of people who made a major impact on me.
I like that answer. And I think, as with everything in life, our intentions are good, but there's just not enough room for everyone sometimes in the first carload, that's why you have to have a caravan. That's why you have to have a book number 2, or, there's a sequel to the movie. So absolutely, I can definitely understand that. Now, if there is one thing that you really want for the readers to take away from your book, what would you say that is? Some people make it a part of the theme of the book, or they drop these nuggets of wisdom along the journey of the path of the book, which sounds like you have, most definitely. But is there one thing that you want to make sure that your readers pick up having read your book?
Well, in my book, when you read it, you'll see my misunderstanding of, and I think this is really rich with most people, because as you're growing up, you look at your parents a certain way, and you think, and a lot of times you think they've done you a certain way, and until you get older and you get clarity on how life may have been completely different for them than you. The book points out how important my father was, not just as a preacher, but as a father, even though he didn't guide me in the multitude of all the things I encompass. But the key was God, because he had the most impact in him being a minister so young in life. I was literally listening to scripture when I wasn't even trying to concentrate on it, because he would have ministers at the house, and he had, my mother was big superintendent over Sunday school. So when she was pregnant with me, I heard scripture. I heard scripture up until a point until when I got out, and in my book, I point out I'm the prodigal son. And that's why a lot of people become prodigal because they try and get away from what's best for them, because they've been spoon-fed it for so long and not realize the significance of it. And when you take the time to be as God would have us to be, forgiving, understanding, and kind, when those things start to grow on you, because sometime in our impatientness, I'm patient enough with people to really learn what humility is, to realize that our parents could only do no more than what they knew, and you will have the same test before you. That's the key to this book. And that's why I use trees, because you have you have different trees in life. And some are good for shade, some aren't. And at the same point, you just have to be able to be patient, just as a tree. You can't always, you can find shade, maybe not all the shade that you want, but it's there. And sometimes the love is there and you may not see it. And that's the key to reading 7 Cuts of Wood, a Spin Black Project.
And I'm really glad that you said that, because I was in a conversation with a lady yesterday, and I mentioned we were talking about cancel culture. And I said, it's really quite curious that there's an understanding or a way of thinking in society right now that as soon as someone says a something, that you cancel them totally and completely. That no one gets a second chance. No one gets to apologize. I said, but yet, when it's that person's turn, right, when they do something, they want to be able to apologize and get back in your good graces. But according to the rules, you're canceled. So it doesn't matter, if you didn't mean to do it, according to the rules that you put out there in the world, everyone's going to be canceled. So I said, wow, if we continue at this rate, give it about 3 years and no one's going to be on radio. No one's going to be on TV. Like, no one's going to be able to do anything because everyone will be canceled. Because people are human and we mess up. And that made me think about what you were saying, that our parents only could only share, could only do what had been poured into them. And if we give them the grace that God has given to us, then it helps us understand their perspective, and we can then share that wisdom with the next generation. I love it. I love it. I love it. Speaking of sharing, what makes this book unique or different in your opinion? Every author, I think, tries to present their very best, their unique story, especially when they're sharing about something that is personal. But what do you think makes your book a little different from perhaps some other authors that have shared about their personal stories?
I think the way I combine scripture and different points of reference, I took the things that are uncommon to bring in the significance of humility that sometimes you can't just speak. I talk about mud. I talk about, because if you really, we all want to be better people, but in our urgency to be important, or in our urgency or haste to what we consider successful by the world standard, we miss the value of the real point of time where we share it with the small things. The small things hold up the big things. And most of the time we miss that because we're so grande in our thinking that, I can only do this if I make a big splash, or I can only do. And so my book is one that will probably, I've had people read it and it didn't hit a point at all with them. And I wasn't surprised, and it didn't bother me, because Jesus talked in parables, because he said that some will see and some won't see. And a lot of times it takes longer for some people to even be able to reference what they saw just last week. It may not hit them until a situation comes and God puts them in that situation. And that's what this book is. It's my life from days when I was very, very young to a 50-year-old man. And I try to be able to want people to be conscious of the people right next to them, the unity that we should share. And a lot of times it's Christians. It's the people that should be really, really, blessing us. That's not. But then you can't be shocked, because when you look at, and when the priest and the Pharisee crossed the street, and it was the Sadducee that actually helped the person. And you think about what Christ is doing for us is telling us, don't just walk past the stranger. And this is the kind of approach that I'm trying to get out of this book. God has no partiality, and we should be the same in how we want to. Don't just think that the only way you can make it is you got to socialize, and you got to do this, and you kick a whole lot of people to the curb, because one day you're going to be that person.
And I really love what you said, and I hope that, especially if there's some young folks listening, that they heard that nugget that you gave, and that was, don't be in such a hurry to be the quick famous, the fast famous, the fast game, that you end up missing out or rolling over or moving past something that is simple and beautiful. And so many times we do that. We're trying to move somebody out of the way, because you blocked in my shine. And we can't do that. You know, we do have to learn how to shine our light together. You know, we don't have to put out someone else's light so that our light can shine, but we can stand in the room and shine together and illuminate the way even more so. I love what you are sharing, and then I hope that people understand that you are doing a very, very great thing. I know that I too have family members, my great aunts or great grand aunts, who are in their hundreds, and it is just amazing the things that they have lived through, and to be able to sit and listen to their stories. And it's like, don't put them in the back of the room. They need a seat up front. They have earned it, and the wisdom that they can impart is absolutely amazing. I love it. I love it. Encouragement for the next generation. What words of encouragement do you have for them?
I would say to the young, and I can tell you that sometimes everything should not be said. Everything doesn't have to have an answer. Discipline is actually freedom. The more disciplined you are, the more you can absorb a thing and then let it go. You can grow a lot better and be safe. Our young people have put themselves on the front line for no reason. There's times in my life that I was, right out there, just like they are now as a youngster, with police arresting me or detaining me or doing this or doing that. And I think it was just because of the understanding I had about authority. I realized that he has a right to do his job, and and if I don't have to challenge him before he can do that. And I think that's what happens sometimes. We want to be so outspoken that we speak too soon. The Bible tells us to be slow to talk.
Well, we are out of time, and with that being said, could you please remind everyone one last time, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Amazon, you can get the book at Amazon and other bookstores. That name of the book is 7 Cuts of Wood, a Spin Black Project. I'm also on Facebook, and you can catch me there at Spin Black Project.
Thank you again, Barry, for being a guest on the show. And listeners, thank you for spending some time with us here as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me, and I appreciate your doing that. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.